Part 11. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, She is Soft and Sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 101. Chapter 101. Let's see who dares to bully her next time. The cakes made by my godmother are the most delicious. None of the cakes sold outside are as delicious as the cakes made by my godmother. Yubao hurriedly ran forward, hugged the other party's legs, and coaxed in a soft voice. Real. Ning Sheng had just been coaxed to get better, when Gu Xingzi's voice sounded faintly next to her again. You just said that you were going to buy food from outside. Don't you think my mother's cooking is not delicious? The expression on Yubeo's face froze, and he turned his head and glared at young Master Gu angrily. The little face looks like a puffer fish. How could this person do this? Not only does it create something out of nothing, but it also sows dissension. The baby is so angry. Ning Sheng's face turned sad again. I knew you were trying to comfort your godmother. You must think the food cooked outside is delicious, so you want to go out and buy it? No, Yubeo likes to eat the cakes made by his godmother the most. He never gets tired of eating them. The ones outside are far inferior to the ones made by his godmother. Yubeo tried his best to make his expression look sincere and trustworthy. Real. Really, really, Yubeo nodded quickly, his little head almost hitting the ground. Ning Sheng finally believed what she said and said with a smile, then the godmother will continue to make cakes for you. Yubeo breathed a sigh of relief. Yeah, godmother is the best. Okay, let's go play. Ning Sheng touched her head. Before leaving, she didn't forget to wink at her son. How is it? Your mother and I cooperate well, right? Ahem. A trace of uneasiness flashed across Gu Xingzi's face, and he lowered his head and pretended to read. Ning Sheng laughed, but she didn't expose him. Although she didn't know what the brat had planned, she was a biological mother, so she couldn't let her guard down at the critical moment, so she immediately turned around and returned to the kitchen. As soon as Ning Sheng left, Yubao hurriedly ran to Gu Xingzi. With puffed cheeks and big round eyes, like a bulging frog, Xiao Nadian said angrily, how could you do this? Gu Xingzi raised his head and looked at the girl's angry appearance. He felt a little itchy for no reason, so he couldn't help but stretched out his hand and poked her on the cheek. After realizing what he had done, a trace of annoyance flashed across his brows. Yubeo's eyes widened in disbelief. This man not only spread rumors about her, but also dared to poke her in the face. Damn it! When Yubeo got angry, he took out a puppet charm and stuck it on Gu Xingzi's body. Gu Xingzi couldn't move immediately and just looked at her with a pair of shocked eyes. Snort. Do you know how powerful she is now? Yubeo raised his little head slightly, took out the pen and cinnabar from the space, and then stared at his face. What do you want to do? Gu Xingzi had a bad feeling for no reason. Yubeo just immobilized his body and did not use the silence spell on him. Humph! Yubeo Xiao Nadian snorted loudly, then picked up a pen, dipped it in cinnabar, and started drawing directly on his face. Gu Xingzi's face turned dark instantly. After a while, Yubeo stopped writing and stared at his face with satisfaction for a long time. He took out his mobile phone to take a photo and saved it. He also made a face at him and said, I told you to lie and deceive people. After doing this, Yubeo unlocked the puppet talisman on his body. Gu Xingzi immediately went to the bathroom. When he saw a big turtle painted on his face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Yubeo took a deep breath and his mood instantly improved. She is a little koi who never suffers. Let's see who dares to bully her next time. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, She is Soft and Sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 102. Chapter 102 Love Token. The next day, early in the morning, Yubeo came out of the house and saw Gu Xingzi, who was just walking out of the yard. As soon as he saw the other party, Yubeo snorted heavily and turned his little face to one side. Seeing this, Gu Xingzi's face darkened, and he also turned cold. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Last night, Gu Xingzi looked at the turtle painted with cinnabar on his face, and it took him a long time to wash his face clean. Probably feeling embarrassed, he went back to the room directly after washing his face, and did not come out of the room again until Yu Bao left. As for Yu Bao, he is still angry that the other party made up things out of nothing last night and made nonsense of her in front of his godmother. Both of them are still angry about what happened yesterday, and neither of them is willing to give in or bow their head and apologize first. Lu Zuan looked at this and that. What's wrong with you two, weren't you fine last night? Oh, no, the two of them seem to have had a quarrel last night. However, the two of them usually quarrel, but they always make up after a while. I didn't expect that this time they would remember it for so long. The whole night has passed, and neither of them has calmed down yet. So what is he going to do now? Should he keep his mouth shut and watch the show, or should he find a way to reconcile the two of them? Lu Zuan thought about it a lot, and finally decided to do nothing and just be quiet and transparent. Since neither of these two people would listen to him, he stopped showing his presence to prevent the flames of war from being transferred to him. Lu Zuan cowardly and wisely chose to shut up. Little ant, don't you want to get to know the little fat boy? I will bring him to you in a moment. Lu Zuan was still thinking about what he said yesterday about introducing the little fat boy to her, and suddenly said when he was approaching school. Just as Yu Bao was about to nod in agreement, he thought of a certain whistleblower and changed his words. Forget it, the cakes made by my godmother are also quite delicious. Lu Zuan looked in the direction of Gu Xingzi, then whispered in Yu Bao's ear, next time I will ask the little fat guy to bring it to you secretly, so that Xing won't find out. Yu Bao's eyes lit up and he nodded immediately. When he arrived at the class, he was about to enter the classroom when suddenly a figure rushed towards Yu Bao. Yu Bao raised his eyes and looked over, and saw the boy who stopped him last night, holding a familiar box of chocolates in his hand. He blushed and handed it to her. Here, give it to you. Yu Bao was stunned for a moment. Before she could speak, she heard Gu Xingzi's cold voice behind her. Didn't your mother tell you not to accept things from strangers? I want you to take care of it. Yu Bao snorted and glared at him. I'm too lazy to care about you. Gu Xingzi's face darkened when he heard this. After saying this, he returned to his seat coldly. Yu Bao had no intention of accepting it at first. When he saw this, he looked angrily at the boy in front of him, took the chocolate from his hand and said, "Thank you. I like this brand of chocolate very much. How much does it cost? I'll give it to you, harvest, reap, but not in vain." The boy looked very excited and said with a blushing face, "No, no need, I'm here to apologize to you. Yesterday, I'm sorry. If he had known she was such a cute girl, he wouldn't have scared her." Seeing that he refused to accept the money, Yu Bao took out a koi lucky bag and handed it to the other person and said, "This is for you." The koi lucky bag is produced by space and can bring good luck to the other person. In exchange for a box of chocolates, it will be more convenient. Not considered a disadvantage. Given it to me, the boy's eyes couldn't help but light up. Does this count as an exchange of love tokens? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 103. Chapter 103 Cold War. Yu Bao nodded, "You give me chocolate, and I give you a lucky bag. We will be friends from now on." "Yeah," the boy nodded with a silly smile. Gu Xingzi, who returned to his seat, looked at the interaction between the two, and his face suddenly became darker. His mouth straightened into a straight line, and he didn't talk to Yu Bao for the whole next day. Two children were having a cold war, the kind where neither one paid attention to the other. The most pitiful person is Lu Swan, sandwiched between the two. I was so scared that I didn't dare to say a word. Actually, Gu Xingzi regretted it very quickly. That girl was just greedy, and there was no need for him to be serious with her. But I couldn't help but take the initiative to apologize to Yubao. As for Yubao, she is very busy, helping people catch ghosts and do feng shui and make elixirs. It is to protect Gu Xingzi that she follows him every day. When he was angry, he just did tasks to earn points and became very busy. For several days in a row, no one would be seen as soon as get out of class was over. After school that day, Yubao received a call from Ji Qing, saying that he would bring someone to see her after get off work. There are usually only two types of people who will look at the master. One is those who are restless at home and have trouble at home. There is also the fear of retribution for doing too many bad things. When Yubao arrived at the gate of the community, the other party was already here. Due to the strict access control of the community, outside vehicles are not allowed to enter and exit at will. The two of them waited at the gate of the community for Yubao to finish school. Besides Ji Qing, there was another person following him. She was a very young woman, and she was obviously stunned when she saw Yubao. Probably she didn't expect that the person Ji Qing brought her to see would be a child. I heard him talk about his master before, so I thought he would be an old man in his 40s or 50s, but the person in front of me is clearly still a child under 10 years old. Master, this is the colleague I told you about. She has a son who is 1.5 years old this year. He cries incessantly every night. He went to the hospital for many examinations but could not find any problems. I wonder if he is infected with the disease. What unclean things are there? Although the woman was a little suspicious of Yubao's identity, seeing that Ji Qing was so respectful to her, let alone coming, she wanted to give it a try, and immediately picked up a child from the car. Yubao glanced at the child in her arms. He was covered in black energy and had a deathly look on his face, which was actually a sign of death. Yubao was secretly surprised, then took out the bank notes, handed them to the other party and said, "Write the child's name and horoscopes on it first." Xie Haoshan. Yubao looked at the child in her arms, then looked at the birthday horoscopes on the paper, and found that the horoscopes were not consistent with the face of the child in her arms. How so? System, this is not simple, it means that these horoscopes do not belong to this child. Yubao looked at the woman's face again, then grabbed Ji Qing's clothes, pulled him aside, and asked with a serious face, "You just said that the child was born by the sister, are you sure? What is the problem?" Ji Qing, otherwise, who else could have given birth to him? Yubao, I mean, is it possible that the child was brought back from outside? Ji Qing denied it outright, it's impossible. I remember she took maternity leave at that time. She must have given birth to the child. Yubao's expression couldn't help but become solemn. What's wrong? Ji Qing also realized that something was wrong. This girl will definitely not ask such a question for no reason. It's not like the child is really not your biological child, right? How is this possible? Could it be that you saw it wrong, or maybe the person's birth date was written wrong? End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 104. Chapter 104. Who is the liar? The birth date and horoscope may be wrong, but a person's appearance cannot be wrong. Yubao looked at the child in the woman's arms again, and after carefully confirming the other person's face, he said to the young woman, "A man cannot be a god, and a woman cannot be an immortal. This name is too big, and his horoscope cannot hold it down. Please give him another name." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a shrill voice saying, "Fart, my grandson is a Wenkuxing descended to earth, no name can suppress him. What do you know, a loser? Stop cursing my grandson. And you, You actually took advantage of me to sleep. Why are you worried about taking my grandson away secretly? Please return my grandson to me. I saw an aggressive middle-aged woman getting out of the taxi. The woman has a mean face, but there is actually a baby spirit following behind her. Mom, this is my child too, the young woman said in an aggrieved voice. I just want to bring the baby to see the master. Master? Where did you come from? Are you talking about the little girl in front of you? Bah, I think you just want to kill my grandson. The middle-aged woman glared at the young woman fiercely. He snatched the child from her arms and said, why don't you come back with me quickly? If you ask me, it's all your fault. If you had been willing to sell the house earlier and take the money to take my grandson to see the expert I mentioned, his illness might have been cured long ago. I have never seen you so cruel. Damn it. You don't even care about your own child's life just for some money. The middle-aged woman cursed. Mom, it's not that I don't want to sell, it's just that the house can't be sold at once, the young woman tried to explain. The middle-aged woman interrupted her impatiently, you don't need to explain to me. In short, if my grandson has any shortcomings, I can't forgive you. Linjia, who allowed you to take the child away? Didn't you see how anxious my mother was? At this moment, a young man stepped out of the taxi again. His face was somewhat similar to that of a middle-aged woman. At first glance, they are mother and son. The middle-aged woman felt more confident when she saw her son helping her to speak. She gave the young woman a hard look again, hugged the child and was about to leave. The young woman, Linjia, hurriedly stepped forward and said, Mom, you're here, just let the little master take a look. But he was pulled away by the man next to him. What are you looking at? Come home with me. Fortunately, you are still a college student, and you actually believe in these futile and ignorant things. I think you did it on purpose. You deliberately wanted to make me. Mom is worried. Why are you such a vicious woman? Isn't it just for our own good that we can earn more money so that our children can go to work earlier? See a better doctor. My mother is right. If you are really worried about your child, sell your house as soon as possible. Use the money to take my son to see a specialist. Don't talk about it all day long. Now hurry back with me. If my son's condition gets worse, let me deal with you. But, Linjia wanted to say something else. But he was interrupted by the other party. But what? You don't really believe what this little girl says, do you? How old is she? Only a stupid woman like you would believe such a deceptive trick. Then he glanced at Ji Qing and Yu Bao again. What's wrong with learning at a young age? Why do you learn to be a liar at such a young age? You'll get better at it when you grow up. I advise you to speak politely. Who is the liar? Ji Qing's face suddenly turned cold. He had already lost his patience. The words that the mother and son just said to the young woman made people feel uncomfortable. However, after all, it was a family matter, and it was hard for him to say anything more. But now the other party actually talks about his master, which is unbearable. You actually think that the things passed down by our ancestors don't make sense. Also, please take a look clearly. Where is this place? Does my master need to lie to you? Since you don't believe it, forget it. My master doesn't have to save people. No. He saw the young woman secretly crying in the tea room while she was at work. He also heard from her colleagues that she worked during the day and took care of her son at night. She didn't get enough rest, kept making mistakes at work, and was scolded by her supervisor. At that time, when I heard about her son's situation, I felt something was wrong, so I thought about asking Yubeo for help. I didn't expect that the other party would have such a wonderful mother-in-law and husband in his family. If I had known about it, he would have been fine. This matter was something he didn't think carefully about. The young man looked up and glanced at the name of the community. He had heard of this place, and it was said that rich and powerful people lived there. Even the salary of the security guards here is higher than him. The man lost half of his energy in an instant. He frowned and said, "I won't tell you, this is my son. I have the right to decide whether to believe it or not." Then he turned to glare at the woman, "Are you leaving or not?" Ji Qing's words not only reminded men, but also young women. Although the little girl in front of her is not very old, she is beautiful and charming, like a little fairy under the Bodhisattva's throne. Perhaps it's a bit extraordinary. Probably because she is a strong mother, the woman's originally wavering mind became determined again, pulling the man and saying, "He is also my son, will I still harm him? Just think of it as me begging you, just let me give it a try. Maybe it will work." The man snorted coldly, "Do you think feudal superstition is more useful than experts? I think you just can't bear to give up money. I didn't expect you to be such a person. For money, you would even care about the life of your own son. I really misjudged you." The woman felt aggrieved, "But we have already spent a lot of money, and the doctor said there is nothing wrong with the examination. I just want to give it a try." She was not reluctant to spend money, it was her child, and she wanted it better than anyone else. "I feel bad, I want my child to be healthy more than anyone else. You have to try it yourself. I won't let these weird things harm my son." The man refused impatiently. At this time, Yu Bao's voice was heard. The voice was sweet, but the words he said were heartbreaking. "I advise you to give the child to him to take away. It's not your biological child anyway. You need to dig out your heart and soul, others don't appreciate it either." Even Ji Qing was startled when Yu Bao's voice came out. "However, I had some vague guesses beforehand. Although I was surprised when I heard it, I quickly accepted it." "Master, you misunderstood, this is my son." The woman was stunned for a moment, then quickly turned around and explained to Yu Bao. Except for the middle-aged woman and the young man, there was an obvious trace of panic on their faces. "Yu Bao, according to your appearance, your son is separated from you at the moment. As for this child, judging from your appearance, you are not related to mother and son." End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 105. Chapter 105, Secret. The woman was stunned, opened her eyes wide, turned around and looked at the child in the middle-aged woman's arms and said, "How is this possible? Master, are you mistaken? He was born to me in 10 months of pregnancy. Why, maybe not my son." The man and the middle-aged woman couldn't help but look at each other, with a trace of guilt and fear flashing across their faces at the same time. The next second, the man who was listening loudly said, "I have told you that this is a liar, and you still don't believe it? She can't even tell whether her son was born to you. Why do you believe in such a person? Why don't you hurry up and follow her? I'm leaving." After saying that, he took the woman's hand and took her away by force. Yubeo saw the man's reaction in his eyes and said slowly, "Uncle, if what I said is true, Anta doesn't know that you must know it, right?" He then said to the young woman, "You did give birth to a son, but it's not like this. If you don't believe it, you can take your child for a DNA test. If you think the DNA test is too slow, you can also take him to have his blood type tested." The woman was obviously hesitant because of Yu Bao's words. When the man saw this, the panic on his face became more and more obvious, and he tried to stay calm and said, "You don't really believe what she said, do you? How can you still not know about the son you gave birth to? If he wasn't our son, how could he be? Whose is it? It couldn't have been a mistake in the hospital, right? Yo Bao, it is impossible to give birth to the wrong child. After all, although he is not born to the aunt, he is directly related to you, uncle. In other words, the son is not the young woman's, but her husband's. They are not real mother and son, but they are real father and son, real grandparents. Hearing this, the woman's pupils shrank slightly and she couldn't help but raise her head and stare at the man's face. The man turned his head subconsciously and avoided the other person's sight. The other party's obvious evasive action made her heart skip a beat. This child looks nothing like her, but there is a slight resemblance between his eyebrows and his father. She used to think that the child didn't look like her father. The grandma took care of the child as soon as he was born. Before the maternity leave ended, he was urged to go back to work. Her husband told her at the time that her mother-in-law was thinking about her and was afraid that her supervisor would have objections to her if she left the company for too long. He also said that a woman wants to be financially independent and does not want her to give up her career for the sake of her children. At that time, she was so moved that she gave most of her monthly salary to her mother-in-law to support the family, leaving only a small part for herself. Thinking about it now, the other person seems to be afraid of her coming into contact with the child. I usually don't let her hold her at home, saying that she works hard at work. During this period of time, she had the longest contact with her children. Even if the child is sick, she is not allowed to take leave to take care of her at home. In addition to urging her to go to work, she is asked to raise money. Her monthly salary is given to her mother-in-law, so there is no money left. Her husband and mother-in-law set their sights on a house left to her by her parents. They said that someone had introduced a very powerful expert who could treat children's problems at night, but the fee was relatively expensive, so they asked her to sell the house. Treat children. She was not reluctant to give up. After all, the house could not be sold just by saying it was for sale. Just when she heard Ji Qing say that the child didn't seem to be sick and that he could see his master, she quietly took the child out. The child is usually taken care of by her mother-in-law during the day and is only handed over to her at night. The other party also took care of the child at night before, but during this time the child cried a lot at night. The mother-in-law said that she was too old to take care of the child at night, so she threw the child to her. She has to go to work during the day, but her husband's family does not allow her to take leave, saying that she will not get paid if she does not go to work, and the family expenses are not enough. But the child kept crying at night, and no one helped her. She couldn't sleep all night long, so she lost energy at work and made mistakes and was scolded by her supervisor. She would not be able to bear to cry in the tea room. Firstly, she felt sorry for her children, and secondly, because it was too hard and the work pressure caused her to lose control of her emotions. Later, Ji Qing said that he would introduce his master to her. She really had no choice but to treat a dead horse as a living horse doctor. Perhaps it can actually be useful? It can't be worse than the current situation. She took the child out secretly while he was sleeping. She didn't expect that they would catch up so quickly. Before Yubeo said those words, she had never doubted that the child was not her own. But now that I think about it, everything seems suspicious. But if this is really not her child, then where is her child? Yubeo, if you want to see her, I can help you find her. The woman was shaken. It's just that I couldn't accept it for a while. The other party just said that the child is not hers, but her husband's, so there is no mistake in the hospital's delivery. But her husband exchanged the child she had for the child she had with someone else? But, will it? If it is true, why would the other party do this? The woman's suspicious eyes completely stimulated the man's tense nerves. The man suddenly became excited and his voice suddenly became louder. You don't really believe what she said, do you? What kind of nonsense is this? But how could the child you gave birth to in 10 months of pregnancy be not our child? And you are so young and talking nonsense. Let's see if I don't teach you a lesson. He raised his hand and was about to swing it at Yubao, but was caught by Ji Qing. What do you want to do? The man's face turned purple and he stared in Yubao's direction. Let her talk nonsense at such a young age and ruin our relationship as husband and wife. I just want to teach her a lesson. Whether what she said is true, you know in your heart. My master never makes mistakes. Ji Qing originally thought that Yu Bao was wrong. After all, the other party did give birth to a child, how could it not be her biological child? But after listening to Yu Bao's words, you can probably guess what's going on. I didn't expect there to be such a shameless, sinister, and calculating man in this world. Then he looked at the young woman and said, if I were you, the first thing you should do now is to find out whether the child is your own. Don't end up working hard and spending money and effort for other people's children, while your own children don't even have to suffer anywhere. I know he didn't want to get involved at first. After all, this matter didn't sound easy. When it comes to other people's private affairs, this is not something outsiders should interfere with. After all, they are husband and wife, and what happens in the end is a matter between them. But the other party actually dared to attack his master and even beat a child. This was unbearable. The man looked flustered and grabbed the woman's hand and said, don't listen to their nonsense. This is our child. The child you gave birth to in the hospital has been raised by your side. Do you still recognize it? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 106. Chapter 106. Why don't you save me? No, that's not right. Although she gave birth to the child, he did not hold it to her for the first time. The baby was diagnosed with amniotic fluid infection just after birth and stayed in the hospital for a week. She was discharged from the hospital before her child. She was undergoing confinement at home at that time. Her mother-in-law and husband took her back from the hospital. Her baby weighed more than 6 pounds when she was born, but weighed 8 pounds when she was brought back. Her husband's family said that children grow fast when they are born, but she didn't think much about it. Everything she thought about at the moment was wrong. Okay, why are you talking so much nonsense to her? She loves to leave, she is a brainless thing, and she was tricked by a little girl's movie. She even doubted the child she gave birth to. She is really deceived by lard. The middle-aged woman on the side suddenly shouted angrily. The young woman was scolded by her and became hesitant again. Yubeo spoke again, did you have a daughter before? The young woman suddenly raised her head and looked at Yubeo. She suddenly became excited and tears fell down. Yes, the little master can even calculate this. Yubeo, has she passed away? Linjia nodded with tears in her eyes. My daughter accidentally fell into the river and died when she was 3 years old. Your daughter's death was not an accident, Yu Bao said, looking in the direction of the middle-aged woman. The latter's heart skipped a beat when he saw it, and then he said sternly with a dark face, what else could it be if it wasn't an accident? Who told her to disobey and run to the river to play alone? She will die if she falls. Yo Bao, mother-in-law, have you often felt sore in your shoulders recently and can't lift them up? The middle-aged woman hesitated for a moment, looked at her and said, how do you know? She had indeed felt sore in her shoulders recently, and thought she was tired from taking care of her grandson. That's why she left her grandson to be taken care of by her daughter-in-law at night. Otherwise she would be reluctant to part with it. Ubaoba blinked his eyes and said clearly, because your granddaughter is lying on your shoulder. She said that you took her to play by the river. When she fell, you were watching from the bank. She struggled desperately. Wanted you to save her, but you just didn't save her. She didn't understand, so she kept following you and wanted to ask you. Grandma, why don't you save me? Yubeo's voice suddenly changed. It was still a childish and soft voice, but it sounded like the voice of another little girl. The middle-aged woman jumped up suddenly, her face turned pale, and her voice really sounded like her eldest granddaughter. The little grandson in her arms woke up due to her actions and cried loudly in her arms. The middle-aged woman didn't care about coaxing at this moment. She glared at Yu Bao and said, "You little girl, what are you talking about?" Yu Bao made a face at her. "I didn't, I asked for your granddaughter. She is looking at you now. Mother-in-law, why didn't you save her?" The middle-aged woman looked flustered and tried to calm down. "I don't know what you are talking about." Lin Jie looked at the middle-aged woman in shock. "Mom, is everything she said true? Didn't you say that Nayuni ran to the river to play by herself? Didn't you say that you didn't know anything? You didn't mean to save her on purpose? Nayunius, why on earth are you doing this? I should have known. You didn't like Nayuni when she was born, and you kept urging us to have a second child. But you can't just watch her fall into the river and not save her just because you don't like her. She is yours. Granddaughter. That's enough," the middle-aged woman suddenly said loudly. "If you didn't agree to have a second child, I wouldn't be able to tolerate her. If you want to blame me, it's you. Who made your belly unsatisfactory? You gave birth to the first child. You're a loser. You want to destroy our old Xie family." Lin Jie's face turned pale and he said in a daze, "That's why you deliberately took her to the river and watched her drown without saving her? You're so cruel. I'm going to sue you for murder." Her expression suddenly changed and her voice became shrill. A trace of panic flashed across the middle-aged woman's face, and she couldn't help but look at her son. The latter immediately said, "Lin Jie, why are you talking to my mother? My mother didn't mean it. Besides, my mother can't swim. How can you save her?" Lin Jie was startled, then raised her eyes and looked at the other party. "So, you already knew that it was your mother who killed Nayuniu?" The man said in an impatient tone. "Are you annoyed? I already told you that it was an accident. No one wanted to kill Nayuniu. If you want to blame her, just blame her for her own death." Lin Jie said with tears in her eyes, "She is also your daughter, how can you say that to her? Otherwise, even if she is dead, do you still want us all to pay for her life? Okay, I won't talk nonsense to you. We will take Haoshan away. As for you, it's up to you whether you want to leave or not." Lin Jie didn't know where the courage suddenly came from. He snatched the child from the middle-aged woman's hand and said, "None of you are allowed to leave. You must speak clearly today." The child was frightened and cried loudly again. Lin Jie suddenly softened his heart, but when he thought of Yu Bao's words, he forced himself to harden his heart. It is a daughter first and then a son, she has to figure it out no matter what. "We have nothing to say to you, give me the child back." The man wanted to step forward and the child back. Lin Jie took a step back and said, "You can't take the child away. I want to take him to the hospital for DNA testing." "No, we can't let her go." The middle-aged woman immediately panicked after hearing this. The man stared at her and said, "Are you crazy? Just because of the nonsense of a little girl liar, you are going to do DNA? You would rather believe an outsider than us. Have you ever thought about it? If you don't want to, get divorced, but I won't let you take the child with you. You have to think clearly." "I have thought clearly. I must do the test. You killed my daughter, and now I only have one son left. None of you can stop me. If you don't let me find out today, I'll tell you to go to the police station and tell the police." The man's expression suddenly became ugly. "You want to call the police to arrest us?" "Lin Jie, I just want to find out the truth." As soon as the middle-aged woman heard that she was going to call the police, she immediately took her son's hand and said, "We can't let her call the police. By the way, divorce her immediately. The divorced grandson is also our family. Without my permission, she can go anywhere. Don't even think about taking it with you." Ji Qing, who was watching the show on the side, said, "Auntie, you are wrong about this. When the child is under 2 years old, it will be given to the mother first. Unless the mother is unwilling to raise it, it will be given to the man. Even if it is a divorce, the child doesn't belong to your family either. When the middle-aged woman saw this, she rolled her eyes, then sat down on the ground, slapped her thighs and howled, "Oh my God! If you don't open your eyes, your daughter-in-law will drive your mother-in-law to death." Linjia's face changed, her lips turned white as she looked at her mother-in-law on the ground. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 107. Chapter 107. Please, let me see her. Linjia's expression changed, but thinking of her daughter who died young and her son who might have been replaced and whose whereabouts are unknown, she quickly calmed down again, hardened her heart and looked at her mother-in-law who was acting recklessly on the ground and said, "Mom, I just want to find out the truth. My daughter is dead. I will never let anything happen to my son. Don't worry, as long as you prove that Haoshan is my son, let alone selling the house, I will save his life. But if someone really replaces my child, I will never change my mind." Seeing her daughter-in-law who suddenly became aggressive, the woman on the ground couldn't help but panicked and said, "Why are you changing the child? Don't listen to their nonsense. Isn't the child you gave birth to my grandson? Why should I replace my own grandson? Ji Qing, that's not certain. As long as your son's grandsons are all your own, and they have 10 fingers, maybe you prefer grandsons born by other women." The middle-aged woman choked, probably because she was told something that was on her mind, and her eyes were wandering. I couldn't find the words to refute for a moment, my face turned purple, I slapped the ground, pointed at him and yelled, "This is our family's business, what does it have to do with you, an outsider? I understand, are you my son, my daughter-in-law is hooking up? Let me tell you, you, an unrelated outsider, are so active in our family affairs, and you still keep talking to my daughter-in-law. You two have been having an affair for a long time, and you just want to break me up. Son's home." Ji Qing was instantly shocked by the other party's shameless and offensive words. He explained with a dark face, "Auntie, please don't talk nonsense, we don't have any." "It's nothing." The middle-aged woman seemed to be suddenly opened up to Ren and Do. She got up from the ground, pointed at him and cursed, "I said okay, why did my daughter-in-law bring my grandson to see something? Master, you are using your children as an excuse to have a secret meeting. Come and see, adulterers and adulterers are shameless. It is not enough to harm my son and grandson, but you also want to slander me, an old woman. If you still don't admit it, come and see. My daughter-in-law is stealing, and she's going to force my wife to death." Linjia didn't expect that her mother-in-law would accuse her of having an affair with another man and continue to cause trouble outside without caring about it. She immediately blushed and said, "Mom, what are you talking about? We are just colleagues. Fortunately, this is a high-end residential area, and the people who come in and out are all respectable people. Everyone maintains their identity, and they are not like a group of ants in the vegetable market watching the excitement. The other party has been howling for a long time, but no one stopped." Seeing that there was no audience, the middle-aged woman couldn't stop howling. However, it was easy for her to catch the topic, so naturally she would not let it go. She pointed at Linjia and cursed, "Whose colleague will take care of other people's housework, what? You said you came to see the master. Where is the master? You don't want to think that this little girl is the master you call us? Do you think we are all fools? Who will believe you? You are obviously just having a secret meeting and using the child as an excuse. Bah, you shameless bitch, my son has suffered 800 lifetimes of bad luck to marry you." Beside, the man's face was green, and he stared at Linjia with eyes that wanted to eat people. "You bitch, you actually stole people behind my back. Do you believe what your mother just said?" Linjia was stunned. She had never seen anyone cuckolding her. It was just her mother-in-law making trouble unreasonably, but even the man she got along with day and night didn't believe her. The man's eyes fell on Ji Qing's face, and he had to admit that the other person was younger than him and better looking than him. His dark inferiority complex made the man's face distorted. My mother is right, I see you guys have been there for a long time, got together, adulterers and adulterers. Lin Jie was completely disappointed with this family. It was obvious that they had done something wrong, but they did not feel any guilt at all. Instead, they slandered her and threw dirty water on her. That's enough. Since you don't believe it, I have nothing to say. After I finish the DNA test, we will go for a divorce. Look, son, she admitted it. She has had second thoughts about you and this family for a long time. Li, divorce her, our family no longer wants this daughter-in-law. By the way, remember to ask her for the bride price. She is the one who is sorry. We can't give her this money for nothing. Not only do we have to get the gift money back, but we also have to ask her to compensate our family for the loss. We have to ask her to compensate our family for the house. The middle-aged woman's eyes became brighter as she spoke. It's as if those things have become his own. Lin Jie was too lazy to explain. She didn't want to stay in a home like this for a moment longer. She didn't want to take another look at such a person. It was also her fault that she was blind. It took her so long to see the faces of this family clearly. The man said with a livid face, divorce is okay, but you can't take the child away. Besides, you are sorry for me. If you get divorced, you must leave the house. Don't worry, I won't ask for anything that belongs to you. Of course, they couldn't take away any more of what belonged to her. As for the children, I just want my own children. The middle-aged woman on the side immediately shouted, impossible, that is also our child. As long as I am here, you can't take my grandson away. The grandson's house can only belong to their family. Yo Bao's voice suddenly sounded, mother-in-law, as long as you are gone, and can take away the child. You bitch, what did you say? How dare you curse me? The middle-aged woman immediately felt like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. If she hadn't seen Ji Qing protecting her in front of her, she would have rushed forward. Yo Bao was not afraid of her at all. He stuck his head out from behind Ji Qing and said, mother-in-law, have you forgotten that you killed your granddaughter? You will go to jail for killing someone. The middle-aged woman's eyes flashed, and she glared at Yu Bao and said, you fart, you said I killed my eldest granddaughter. Do you have any evidence? If not, it's slander. That's right, it's been so long since it happened, and no one saw it at all at the time. Besides, who would believe that grandma killed her granddaughter? How can you say there is no evidence? Yu Bao's voice sounded again, your granddaughter is on your shoulder. Do you want to meet her? I can let her confront you face to face. The middle-aged woman's face was horrified when she heard this. She waved her hands and said, no, 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 I don't want to see her. Let her go. Go quickly. Go quickly. She deserves to die. Don't blame me. Don't pester me. Hearing this, Lin Jie looked at Yu Bao with tears in his eyes and said, is everything you said true? Can you really let me see my daughter? I beg you, let me see her. The middle-aged woman immediately yelled, whatever you see, you are already dead, so what else can you see? Humans and ghosts have different paths. Do you want to kill us? End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 108. Chapter 108 Is she bad? Most people who have done bad things have a guilty conscience. On the one hand, the middle-aged woman does not believe in Yu Bao's ability, but on the other hand, she feels that what she said is true. Mom, that's my daughter, why can't I even see her once? You think she will harm you just because you feel guilty? That's nonsense, I think you just can't see me well, the middle-aged woman said with a blushing face. Lin Jie then looked at Yu Bao and said, Little master, please let me see her. Yu Bao then took out a few ghost charms and stuck one on each person's back. The middle-aged woman didn't want to stick it, so Yu Bao waved his little hand, and the charms flew to each other automatically. Everyone felt a gust of cold wind blowing by, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped a few points. The next second, everyone's eyes fell on the middle-aged woman's shoulders. The middle-aged woman suddenly had a bad premonition. Why are you looking at me like this? This was not the first time Ji Qing had seen that kind of thing, but he still felt that his heart was greatly stimulated. Lin Jia's tears suddenly flowed down. He looked at the thin figure on the middle-aged woman's shoulders and said, Nayuniu. Because Lin Jia's mother-in-law didn't like Nayuniu, she would always mix milk powder with a lot of water to feed her, and sometimes feed her the water used to wash baby bottles directly. As a result, Nayuniu was malnourished. When she was 3 years old, she looked smaller than other children of the same age. Lin Jia also thought her daughter was too thin at first and wanted to take her to the hospital for a checkup. However, the mother-in-law was crying and making trouble at home, seeking death and living, saying that she was doubting her, saying that she had worked hard to help them take care of the baby, but she didn't know how to be grateful. Her husband also blamed her for being ignorant, saying that her mother had worked hard to take care of their children, and she shouldn't have hurt the old man's heart so much. Lin Jia also felt that something was wrong with her. From then on, she would buy 2 more barrels of milk powder every month, but she didn't know that the milk powder never entered Niu's belly. Her mother-in-law directly saved the milk powder and secretly sold it to nearby places. Baby shop. After she turned 1 year old, she stopped formula milk and cooked porridge for her every day. When Lin Jia was at home, she would add something to the porridge. If Lin Jia was away, she would just give her plain porridge. Lin Jia bumped into her twice, but she thought it was hard to blame her mother-in-law for raising the child, so she could only secretly supplement the child's nutrition. Unfortunately, it seems to be of no use. Niu is still very thin. Niu is currently lying on Granny Lin Jia's shoulder. Her big eyes are full of confusion. Although she is thin and small, she is as cute as Yuxiu and is not as ferocious and terrifying as the ghost baby on TV. The man also recognized the figure on the middle-aged woman's shoulder. His pupils shrank, and there was a trace of fear on his face. His voice trembled slightly. Mom, Niu is on your shoulder. She was obviously his daughter, but at the moment the man only had fear. The middle-aged woman's face changed drastically when she heard this. Her body suddenly became stiff, she slowly turned her head, and unexpectedly came face to face with a childish face. The latter looked at her with a pair of big eyes and a confused expression, and asked in a soft voice, Grandma, why don't you save me? Oh my God, what a ghost! Lin Jia's mother-in-law screamed suddenly, fell to the ground in fright, waved her hands desperately and said, go away, don't follow me. Yingling seemed to be hurt, his mouth pursed, showing an aggrieved expression. I don't understand why Grandma wants to drive her away. Is it Niu who is not good? But Niu is obviously very obedient. Only a familiar gentle voice sounded, Niu. Niu. Mom. Niu turned her head and finally saw Lin Jia beside her. Mom, the voice suddenly became a little more cheerful. Lin Jia reached out to touch her, but missed her, and his hand passed directly through the other person's face. Lin Jia was startled, and then she remembered that the person in front of her was no longer her living daughter, but just her ghost, and her tears suddenly fell even more fiercely. Niu, didn't Mom tell you not to go to the river to play? Why didn't you listen to Mom? Yingling turned to look at Granny Lin Jia and said, Grandma took me there. Grandma said there were fish in the river and asked Niu to see them. Niu accidentally fell into the water. The water was so cold. Niu is so scared. Mom, why doesn't Grandma save Niu? Is it because Niu is not a boy? So grandma doesn't like Niu Niu. The soft voice was full of grievance and confusion. Linjia's tears burst out again. Her heart seemed to be pulled hard by an invisible hand, and she was heartbroken. It's all my mother's fault. It's my mother's failure to protect Niu Niu. Yingling quickly laughed again. Mom, Niu Niu has seen her brother. He is very cute. Niu Niu likes his brother very much, and his brother also likes Niu Niu very much. Yingling's words made everyone's hearts tremble. At this moment, the boy in Linjia's arms woke up. The boy actually looked in the direction of the baby spirit, making a sound of ah. On. He stretched out his hand to catch the boy. The little guy is already 1.5 years old and can walk but cannot talk yet. The kid can see it, right? Ji Qing on the side said in surprise. Yubao nodded. Children's eyes are the cleanest things in the world, so they can see things that adults cannot. Yingling's eyes fell on his brother. When he saw his mother holding him, his eyes couldn't help but darken and he said, Mom, do everyone only like younger brothers? No, Mom likes Niu Niu the most, Linjia choked and said. Yingling laughed with satisfaction after hearing this. Really? Niu Niu also likes her mother the most. However, Niu Niu also likes her younger brother. Niu Niu is willing to give half of her mother to her younger brother. In the future, her mother can like her younger brother as much as she likes Niu Niu. Okay, Linjia nodded. Her daughter's sensibility made her feel even more heartbroken. If my daughter is still alive, she will definitely be a good sister. Yingling's eyes immediately fell on the man again, and he shouted happily, Dad. The latter subconsciously took a step back. You, don't come over. The light in Yingling's eyes gradually went out. She knew that neither her grandma nor her father liked her. They only liked her younger brother. Yingling's eyes fell on the boy in Linjia's arms again. When she saw her younger brother waving and smiling at her, Yingling couldn't help but smile. At this time, Yu Bao's voice suddenly sounded, I know you just want to play with him, but people and ghosts are different, and you will only harm her if you stay with him. Are you willing to follow me? Granny Linjia, who was scared to death just now, immediately cursed after hearing this. Okay, it turns out you are the one who harmed my grandson. You liar, you lose money. I knew you were not a good person. Even if you die, you will still have to do it. Come to harm our family. Linjia looked at the other party suddenly. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 109. Chapter 109 Not Worthy. Enough. Linjia looked at the other party suddenly, his eyes were red with deep hatred. Niu Niu has been killed by you, what else do you want? Don't you feel a little bit guilty? How hard-hearted and cold-blooded do you have to be to do such a cruel thing? The latter was startled, covering his chest and said, Why are you so loud? Isn't this all for the Xie family? Who makes you want to harm the Xie family? Besides, you also heard it, she accidentally fell, I didn't push her, it's not against the law if I don't save others, right? If you didn't trick her into going to the river, how could she fall? It's you murderer. Linjia only hated herself for not being able to recognize people well and for being indecisive. She knew her husband's family didn't like her, so why did she still put her daughter in the river? Let the other party take care of her daughter. It was she who killed Niu Niu. Ji Qing was born in a military family and had upright views. He had never seen such a shameless person. But because Linjia's mother-in-law had just slandered him and Linjia for having an improper relationship, she never spoke out again. Toads do not bite people, but they bite people. In line with the principle that more things are worse than less things, he didn't want to get involved in their family's affairs anymore, but he couldn't bear it anymore when he heard this. It is indeed not illegal not to save people, but you deliberately took a 3-year-old child with you. You went to the river and had a subjective motive to kill her. You committed murder deliberately. Even if you didn't instigate it, you still have legal responsibility. Then he turned to look at Linjia. Call the police. I believe the police will make their own judgment. And she just admitted in person that she deliberately took people to the river, and I have a recording. No, 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 I didn't kill her. She really fell by herself. You can't call the police to arrest me. Granny Linjia subconsciously stepped back and grabbed her son's hand. Son, please save Mom, Mom doesn't want to go to jail. The man comforted him and said, Mom, don't be afraid. Niu Niu is my daughter. As long as I don't pursue the case, the police will not arrest you. Then he glared at Linjia and Ji Qing. What do you want to do? Linjia, I just want to get justice for my Niu Niu. Don't forget that she is also my daughter. You killed my daughter. I won't just let it go. Thinking of the child she had worked so hard to conceive in 10 months, her lovely daughter, because she was not my son, was deliberately taken to the river by his own grandmother and drowned. When Linjia thought of this, she felt so painful that she couldn't breathe. It's her fault, it's her failure to protect her children. Xia Linzheng frowned. Linjia, my mother was also confused for a moment. Besides, Niu Niu has been dead for so long, why do you have to pursue it? What good will it do to you if I really arrest my mother? Don't forget, our son still needs mother to take care of him. Even if she has no merit, she has worked hard for so many years, can you just forget it? Impossible, Lin Jiadao said, that is my daughter's life. You feel sorry for your mother, and I feel sorry for my daughter. Why do you treat my daughter like this? What did she do wrong? A trace of impatience flashed across Xia Linzhen's face. Who said she wasn't a grandson? My mother just wanted a grandson, what's wrong with her? If you hadn't refused to have a second child, how could my mother have gotten into trouble and made such a mistake? Are you blaming me? Your mother killed our daughter with her own hands, and you're still blaming me. Linjia looked at him in disbelief. What kind of twisted and ruthless family is this? Hateful. She actually saw the faces of this family clearly just today. Xia Linzheng said irritably, that's not what I meant. It's just that Niu Niu is dead, and people can't be resurrected. Even if you hold on to her, it won't make any sense. Niu Niu won't survive. Linjia suddenly shouted hysterically, then her death will not be in vain. Whoever killed her will have to pay the price. She usually has a gentle temperament and speaks softly, but suddenly she is like this. Suddenly, Xia Linzheng and her mother-in-law were frightened. Even Ji Qing was a little surprised. No wonder they say that motherhood makes one strong. Probably only when it comes to children, a person will burst out with unprecedented strength. Also, I want you to tell me the truth, is how the child I gave birth to, since they could do things to kill Niu Niu, it is not impossible to replace her child. Xia Linzheng was probably frightened by her for a moment, his eyes flickering fiercely. Looking at the man's obviously guilty and evasive eyes, Linjia still didn't understand. Where is my child? Where did you take him? At this point, Xia Linzheng knew that he couldn't hide it, so he simply said with a broken face, as long as you promise not to pursue Niu Niu's matter, I will tell you where your son is. Otherwise, you will never see him. Xia Linzheng, you bastard. Linjia was so angry that she was trembling all over. She rushed towards the other person, grabbed the other person's clothes tightly and said, give me my son back. Bitch, what do you want to do? Because she was holding a child in her arms, Xia Linzheng broke away easily. Linjia, on the other hand, was worried about the child in her arms and did not dare to make any big moves for fear of hurting the child. Although this child was not her own, she still treated it as her own and watched it grow up. No matter what adults do, children are always innocent. Just thinking about where his son was suffering made Linjia feel extremely painful. Linjia wiped away her tears, took out her cell phone and said, "Since you refuse to say anything, then I will have no choice but to call the police." The mother and son panicked instantly, and immediately rushed to her cell phone away and said, "No, no, you can't call the police. Gia, Mom was wrong. When Mom gets home, she will set up a memorial tablet for Niu. I will burn incense for her every day and confess to her, okay? Just spare Mom this time. I will definitely treat you well in the future." Then he went back. He pulled the man next to him and said, "Ah Sheng, please help Mom and beg her. Mom doesn't want to go to jail." Xia Linzhong said with an ugly face, "Linjia, my mother has begged you like this, do you still want the two of us to kneel down for you?" Linjia said coldly, "No, even if you kneel down, I won't forgive you because you don't deserve it. Also, it's your business to repent. You don't need to set up a memorial tablet for Niu. I'm afraid you will dirty Niu the path of reincarnation." Xia Linzhong saw her firm attitude and couldn't help frowning. "We are just a couple, do you have to do this? Husband and wife? Do you know we are husband and wife now?" Linjia laughed when he heard this, but he smiled and cried again. End of this chapter. Group Pet Koi Little Baby, she is soft and sweet. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 110. Chapter 110 The Truth. Husband and wife? Do you know we are husband and wife now? Linjia laughed when he heard this, but he smiled and cried again. Your mother killed our daughter. Why didn't you say we were husband and wife when you chose to protect her? Niu is your biological daughter. Don't you have any regrets or self-blame? You wouldn't even dream about it at midnight. Do you have nightmares? Also, when you had a child with another woman behind my back and secretly replaced my child, why didn't you remember that we were husband and wife? The thing I regret is being married to you. You. Xia Linzhong was blocked and speechless, his face was blue and purple, and then he went to pull his mother away angrily. Mom, if we don't beg him, Niu will die. I don't believe that the police can really arrest you. Really? What if the police want to arrest me? Granny Lijia shook her body and held her son's hand unconsciously. She doesn't want to go to jail. Nothing by chance. If I go one day, I will say that I killed Niu. I want to see if my father accidentally drowned his daughter. Will he go to jail? Xia Linzhong said while glaring at Lijia's direction. Unexpectedly, the other party is actually a filial son. Linjia finally called the police. Xia's mother did not admit that she intentionally killed her granddaughter. She only said that it was an accident that the child fell into the water. However, there was a recording, so it was useless for her not to admit it. According to the mother and son's confession, the child was indeed not Linjia's. During that time, his daughter died, his wife was in tears all day, and his mother was looking for life and death every day. He was very upset every day, so he went to the bar to drink, and then he did something wrong. The other party is a waitress at a bar, and she earns commission by selling drinks. It was just a casual marriage at first, but after that, Xia Linzhong went there several times, and the two had and soon hooked up. At first, Xia Linzhong didn't intend to take it seriously. He was not stupid. He knew that the women in that place were just acting for fun and might not be sincere. But later, the other party came to her door when she was pregnant and asked Xia Linzhong to divorce him and marry him. Xia Linzhong panicked and wanted to persuade the other party to abort the child, but Xia's mother found out about it. Hai's mother was so eager to beg her grandson that she would keep the child no matter what. Xia Linzhong was annoyed by being forced by two women every day. When he was about to have a showdown with Linjia, he discovered that Linjia was also pregnant. Xia's mother, who originally planned to divorce her son, changed her mind in an instant. After all, the child is still in the belly, who knows whether the final child will be a boy or a girl. What if the other party gave birth to a daughter and Linjia gave birth to a grandson? According to Xia's mother's idea, whoever gives birth to her eldest grandson will be her daughter-in-law. Unexpectedly, both of them gave birth to grandsons for her. The difference between before and after is only a few days. The mother and son wanted to keep both children, so they appeased the woman outside, planned to swap the two children, and promised that the other party would find an opportunity to file for divorce when the children were older. The other party has a child in hand, and he feels that he will be able to come in sooner or later, and he has Xia Linchen's monthly alimony, so there is no trouble. Just a few months later, Linjia returned to work at the company after her maternity leave. Because I felt that it was hard for my mother-in-law to take care of the children, and on the other hand, I was worried that my mother-in-law would not be willing to spend money on the children, so I simply gave most of my salary to my mother-in-law for safekeeping. Xia's mother took her daughter-in-law's salary and thought that if a woman from outside came in and had no money to give her, she would have to spend his son's money. After much deliberation, it was better to have her current daughter-in-law. Besides, there are women out there who hang out in places like bars all day long and have an immoral private life. She might end up cuckolding her son one day. He persuaded his son to find a way to break up with the other party. The women outside were not fools either. They saw the attitude of mother and son and came to see Linjia while he was not at home. She said that she wanted to take away the child and ask Xia Linzheng to pay her a huge amount of alimony in one go, otherwise she would go to Xia Linchen's company to cause trouble. Xia's mother was reluctant to part with her grandson, and she was worried that if things went wrong, her son's job would not be preserved, and Linjia would not be able to keep his wife, and her efforts would be in vain. The mother and son could only promise to divorce her as soon as possible and marry her. Originally, it was enough to just file for divorce, but Xia's mother also wanted a house in Linjia's hands, so she came up with the idea of having her child pretend to be sick to trick Linjia into selling the house. Unexpectedly, the child was really sick and kept crying every night. Everyone who has heard the whole truth. It simply shattered my three senses. There are really all kinds of monsters, ghosts, snakes, demons, and monsters in this world. Xia's mother was eventually detained, awaiting trial. Xia Linzheng did indeed claim that the child was taken to the river by himself and drowned. However, the police were not fools. It was obvious that Xia's mother had done this, so they would naturally ignore such an obvious lie. And inform him that even a parent-child crime constitutes intentional homicide, and the perpetrator may be sentenced to death, life imprisonment, or fixed-term imprisonment of more than 10 years. As soon as Xia Linzheng heard about it, he immediately stopped talking. Only when Xia's mother was taken into the police car, he told her to rest assured that he would find a lawyer to help rescue her. After Xia's mother was taken away, Xia Linzheng turned around and asked Linjia for help to plead with the police together. Rejected by Linjia. Xia Linzheng, you are a vicious woman. If something happens to my mother, I will not forgive you. Linjia looked at the man in front of her and felt that he was very strange. No, he had always been like this. It was just that she was blind and could not see the reality clearly, so she always had illusions about him. Now that my heart has died, I feel extremely disgusted when I look at this man again. Linjia looked at the other party coldly and said, your mother deserves everything she has today. Even if she is sentenced to death, it will not save Nayuniu's life. You'd better pray that our son is okay, otherwise, you and your son are in jail together. You are simply unreasonable. Seeing that she couldn't make sense, Xia Linzheng hurriedly went to find a lawyer. Before leaving, he wanted to take the child away from Linjia, but Linjia refused. Her child was exchanged by them, and she still doesn't know where it is now. She had to keep this child so that the other party could bring her own child to exchange. Little master, thank you. Linjia hugged the child and turned to look at Yubao and Niu Niu, who was following Yubao and agreed to reincarnation. If it weren't for the other party, she would still be kept in the dark until now. Her daughter's death is unknown, and her son's whereabouts are unknown. She is simply the worst mother in the world. Thanks to the little master today, she said. Can you please help me calculate where my son is now? Is he okay? Yo Bao, don't worry, he's fine. He's fine, at least, he's healthier than the one in her arms. It's just that the process of getting it back may not be so smooth. End of this chapter.